It's a tall task. I mean, you're talking about a guy that's going through grief. I mean, they had followed Jesus for years now, and the notion, that he would be crucified, it kind of shocked all of the disciples, and you could understand that the pain that they're going through, and for all of a sudden, for someone to say he's alive, he's risen, even though he did predict it, it was a very confusing time for them, I'm sure. But 8 days later, Jesus again miraculously shows up, and it says 8 days later, which would have been the first day of the week, I'm pretty sure. It says his disciples were inside again. Thomas was with them this time. And again, the doors were locked, but Jesus came through the locked door somehow and stood among them. And the reason that they're pointing out the locked door, a lot of people have said this is claiming that Jesus was in his post-resurrection state. He was able to kind of glide through walls or doors, kind of like a ghost. But that kind of flies in the face of all the other aspects of his resurrection, where he proves that he's physically resurrected. It's not, he's not in a completely new body. He's not like in a healed body. He's still got all these scars, all these piercings. The piercing of his hands and his side was still torn up. He ate fish on the beach with the disciples later in John chapter 21. And so he still was hungry when he first showed up to them. So he's got all these human characteristics. His body is still human body, so he's not a ghost. And I think it's a little short-sighted to say, he's just floating through walls, and that's what it means when it says the doors were locked. I mean, I think this just is saying it was a sort of a miracle that Jesus got to them. The doors were locked because, the Jews were out, the Jewish leaders were out trying to squash all these rumors of Jesus being risen from the dead, because the guards, they had an issue on their hands. If Jesus was risen from the dead, then they were in some big trouble. So they were trying to keep that quiet, trying to squash out any of his followers and persecute them in whatever way was necessary. But, this could just be, Jesus was able to open locked doors. And that comes up in Acts chapter 12, verse 10, in the prison scene, where the locks just open up, quote, on their own accord. The locks just opened. And that's how they were able to escape. So Jesus was doing some sort of miracle like that, where he was just able to open locked doors. Doesn't mean he was floating through like a ghost. Although, it's not out of question that Jesus was teleporting in there. I mean, we also see teleportation later in Acts with the Ethiopian and I think Philip, right? Philip teleports physically. His physical body teleports to a totally different area. I think he's in Samaria or Judea, and he all of a sudden he's on the road, or he teleports to a place where this Ethiopian is coming and making a journey. So out in the middle of the wilderness. So Jesus could have teleported. He could have opened the lock. I don't know exactly what the point here is in verse 26, but I tend not to think that this is Jesus just being a ghost, and that's the whole purpose, that his body, because that would be kind of confusing. And it doesn't necessarily explicitly mean that he's a ghost here. So there's lots of other possibilities and explanations.